So as the expert, Dr. Jed Fahey, knows, one of those pathways would be the NRF2 pathway. And so I really like thinking about those phytochemicals in that way, because we've evolved this genetic way to it's like we were meant to eat these phytochemicals. We were meant to eat these plants, and they do amazing things when we eat them. They're changing our genes, the way our genes are activated, and they're doing enormously beneficial things by doing that. So like, that's, to me, is so fascinating that, you know, we've evolved these mechanisms to basically not only handle the tiny little bit of stress from these phytochemicals, but we have a net positive effect by activating these robust antioxidant, anti-inflammatory pathways and these detoxification pathways. And so to me, that's like one of the coolest parts of it, right? About these phytochemicals, they all often think about it as antioxidant itself, like you're getting vitamin C or alpha tocopherol, one of the major forms of vitamin E, and it's just not the same at all. So I did my postdoc with Dr. Bruce Ames, and at the time when I joined his lab, they were doing research on something that they called the Cori bar at the time, and it was a bar that Mark Shiganaga, a good friend of mine who's just brilliant gut researcher, and Bruce and a few others, Joyce McCann, had come up with a way to get a broad range of micronutrients. So we're talking vitamin D, fat-soluble ones like vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids. They had DHA in there. They had, magnesium, B vitamins, just like a panel of like the classical micronutrients that a majority of the U.S. population is got insufficient levels of. But they also added some phytochemicals. They had some of these polyphenols from chocolate and some other phytochemicals in there. But with Mark's, insight, he said, well, we need something that's like a food matrix. We need something that's like a food matrix that can mimic like what a plant would do if it had all these micronutrients and phytochemicals there. And so he came up with certain types of fiber. HPMC is one, and clinical studies done on this bar. Fast forward, they were trying to do a deconstruction trial to figure out, okay, what happens if you give people the Cori bar, this micronutrient bar, with just the micronutrients, or just the phytochemicals, or without the fiber matrix, and what if they give them the fiber matrix without the phytochemicals and micronutrients? And what they found was that you needed the whole package. The benefits that were found with some of the biomarkers of lowering inflammation, increasing HDL, lowering some of the bad parts of LDL, small dense LDL, those didn't happen when you did just one or the other. You took away the micronutrients and the phytochemicals and everything needed the food matrix there. And that was just a great study, because it really does drive home that concept of, this food matrix, this fiber matrix where you get all these micronutrients is important. It's important, very important. And so there's, like you said, there is synergy going on. There's additive effects. There's things that we don't understand. We don't know why, but it seems to be important to have the whole package.
Hello guys, David Vos here. Another beautiful day, and it's still cloudy. We kind of went back into a spring rather than summer. Well, I guarantee it looks like summers are coming. I'm just guessing. But it's still been pretty warm but cloudy. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Guys, I'm having a wonderful day in this sense. While I'm still going through the detox and, we're still about to go into World War III, and there's bills to pay and different things going on in the world. But I'm really extremely hopeful and encouraged, and I'm happy. I'm happy when I accomplish the things that I need to do, and I feel like I'm doing that. I'm working hard to try and understand, to try and help myself understand and get out of this situation to a place of peace and goodness. As well as by doing that in my journey, I want to write it down, put it on the video, whatever, and help others to maybe benefit from what I'm learning. Because what I'm learning is so profound. Now, I remember, I don't know how long ago, watching this young lady, Patrick Rhonda Patrick, that's her name. And I thought, well, she was on Joe Rogan and she seemed very knowledgeable and she was talking about some particular, I think it was glucosamine or something. And I thought it was interesting. And since then, I've seen her again. She's one of these faces that the elite finance and put out there. And you know that because they end up on Joe Rogan or Tucker Carlson or something. So this is how you know who these guys are, that they're out there telling the truth, right? And all this amazing information, but only so much of it. And they're just little puppets. They don't really understand it, but they're given a script and they're said, now go out there and tell the world. Almost as if they're releasing certain bits of information that they've determined isn't going to destroy their pharmaceutical empire or, start making people well. Tell you a little truth without actually giving you the whole ball of wax, so that you're really just still at ground zero and you really don't know what to do. Oh, so we should eat fiber and we should eat phytochemical. Great. But if you don't tell people that they got to get out of the world, that they can't just live in society and go to the grocery market and get their produce there. If you don't radically change your diet, it's not going to do a darn hill of beans. And they're not explaining that to people. They're not really getting to the nitty gritty. And that's what we're going to do today. I guarantee if you will listen carefully to this video, by the end of it, you will have a comprehensive understanding of what health is and how you can achieve it. And not just, oh, I cured cancer, but I have cured all disease and now I am immortal. I know a lot of you are going to say, that's ridiculous. I'm going to click off of this fool. Well, maybe you should take a little look, because I really believe that we can. I really believe that we can live forever. And I really think that what the Bible is, and we've been showing, is a blueprint, as above, so below. It's showing you all knowledge. It's a science book. The Bible is a history book. I do believe it's a concise Reader's Digest history of the world. Not necessarily by giving us the name of some guy who lived 1,000 years ago, but it is telling us the families and where they went in the table of nations and basic ideas of what was going on and how the priesthood was given to the world, why we came down here, and what we're doing here. But this has all been hidden in the code. But not only is that hidden in the code, but also what you should eat, how your body works. This book, As Above, So Below, will explain the stars, astronomy, biology, history, all science, everything you can imagine, math. Everything is in the Bible. And this is what we're determining. We're interpreting the Bible. And what is an interpretation of Scripture, of prophecy? Well, that's one of the greatest gifts. Paul says, I glory that I speak in more tongues than ye all, but it'd be better that you interpret, right? So interpretation is something that the wisest of the prophets had. Like Daniel, there were others that had dreams, but they couldn't interpret them. But Daniel was made the head of the Magi because he was able to interpret the dream. And it isn't just the dreams. And when I was about 24 years old, the Lord gave me the gift of interpretation, which at the beginning I thought was just for Scripture. But then the Lord showed me, I began to realize it was the same process to interpret everything, your life, everything that happens. Not just the Bible, but all of history and all of science and all the stars and everything else. You can interpret it because it's as above, so below. You've got to be able to see this. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So, bless her soul, her little heart, this young lady's gone to some university and she's learned some things. And she's learned correct things. And she's excited about it. But she's never going to achieve anything, nothing, by eating some pill that, oh, this is a chemical polyphenol, something I need, whatever. And so she pops a pill and swallows it. That's not going to work. And she just admitted it by saying you've got to have the fiber and, the whole plant. But it is so simple. Here's the key. And it's not necessarily, knowledge is first. We got to know or else we can't do it. But above knowledge is doing, activating it. And that requires the mental and emotional maturity. And that's what's going to be difficult for all of you out there. And I can imagine some of you saying, well, Dave, what you're asking us to do, we just can't do. We're just going to go and lay down and die because we can't do it. We can't eat the way you're going to ask us to eat. We're missing our Twinkies and our beer and our whatever, your cigarettes, whatever you're missing. And you feel like you just can't do it. But I'm going to share something with you that will help you understand. Number one is the knowledge of how. Once you know you could live forever, then you might try it, right? If you didn't really believe it, you wouldn't do it. So knowledge is key, and not only that, knowledge that it can do it, but also the knowledge of how. But then there's this other little part. Let's say you were on heroin and somebody said, you need to quit that. And you said, well, I know I should. Maybe that's what people say. Yeah, I'm starting to get sick. My nails are turning black and, I'm barely walking and it's terrible, right? But I can't. And I like the heroin, so I'm not going to stop. Well, that's called addiction. And you might think, let's say that you love Twinkies or something else. And you might think, well, I love them and I don't want to stop. But why don't you do heroin? You'd love it if you tried it. You'd never want to quit. Or fentanyl or cocaine. You don't do it because you know that addiction is false and evil and it's controlling you. And you don't want any part of that. You want to be free. So if you have become addicted to something, cigarettes or heroin or cocaine or anything else, you wouldn't know it unless you're around people that tell you, but you need a lot of people to help you understand that, yes, it's going to be hard. It's going to be a certain period of time. It might be 6 weeks. It might be 2 months. But there's going to be a period of time where you're going to have to detox. And once you do, you're going to be free. And then you're going to feel a lot better. But what we're going to show today is that we're going to tell you what would happen if you detoxed from heroin, cocaine, cigarettes, alcohol. Not that any amount of alcohol would be bad for you. But we'll get to what we should eat and what we shouldn't. But and right there, most people don't know. They don't have a clue what to eat. They're like, well, I got to eat right, so I'll go to the produce aisle and get a banana. That isn't eating right. You got to know and understand. That's first. But the other thing is to know that it actually works so that you will have the strength and the hope that if I did that, it would work. That's what we're going to give you here today. And those who can want it bad enough, if you want to be happy, if you want to be young again, if you want to cure your disease and live, then you will find the strength to watch this and learn it. And it will encourage you to do things you don't think you could do right now because you will have knowledge. And you will say, okay, yeah, this is going to be hard. I might have to spend 6 weeks or 6 months detoxing. And I don't know if I can do it, Dave. But we're going to show you how you can. You can build up to it and you can get there. But if you can get there, and on top of that, start learning how to go back into nature and eat the natural foods, I do believe we can find the answer that we're looking for today. Let me share with you what I've asked AI because I needed to get to some bottom line. I needed to get to a place where nobody understood because they were all overlooking these facts that I wanted to accentuate. So this is what I asked AI. So I was thinking, how or why depression happens. I used to believe it came only from heartaches and bad things happening in our life. Doctors started saying years ago it was a chemical imbalance. I now think this could be true, And the scientists may have engineered the whole thing. The modern genetically created food is mostly sugar and carbs or starch that is not in wild nuts, beans, and ancient grains or wild berries. So bananas and apples and oranges are hybrid fruit with lots of sugar. This, along with modern bread and processed food, high fructose corn syrup, causes overgrowth of candidus and with it a huge chemical imbalance. I've been detoxing 2 months or more now from sugar and I feel terrible. It is not just a physical tiredness, but a mental one. Sheer exhaustion with depression. I am imagining that this candidus fauna flora biology is sending chemical messages to my brain to eat sugar. I will resist. But the depression is real. So I have a few questions. This will perhaps go beyond the consensus knowledge, as most of that is geared to only keep us on not proper diet, but merely a pharmaceutical chemicals. Not a whole food, but extracts from the real wild natural herbs. I have also been trying for weeks to figure out why, even when I am depressed. When I take THC, I feel completely fine, happy, positive, and energetic. I began thinking we aren't getting the herbs with phytochemicals and phenols, etc. We need to become balanced. But with the detox going on now, I feel it could be just as much or more, not just a lack of natural herbs with their chemicals, but biology that is created from sugars that feed candidus and make infection, that is sending messages to the brain to feel bad. I heard yesterday that pine needles have lots of vitamin C. Then I realized a natural indigenous person would need vitamins and would get them from pine needles in many places on the earth where forests grow. Plus, the needles have terpene. Then I remembered that cannabis had terpenes. And I asked you, AI, and you said terpenes are a chemical that helps mood by giving us serotonin. Maybe GABA receptors, I don't know. But then I thought, if terpenes, which are in lots of wild herbs and pine, maybe even tannins and other phenols and other chemicals, need to be eaten and modern processed chemicals don't, and that if we had the proper chemical balance, it might take months of detox, but we then could achieve euphoria and bliss. I don't think any human in modern times has ever experienced absolute, pure, natural, and balanced food to determine the result. But we do know that these things are true, even though no one has tried living like that. I will be doing it. I am 2 months in, so far detox, and I believe it may go on another 6 months. Probably these parasites and candidus will continue to cause chemical reactions till they are gone. Also, I hear you say candidus is a natural fungus that we should have, but in balance. Is that proven? What if all humans have it only because 5,000 years ago we went to city states and agricultural lifestyles away from hunter gatherers? Is it possible to live without this candidus? If it were, it seems it's possible this chemical message to be depressed would cease and correct chemicals would begin to create happiness like we've never seen in 5,000 years. I believe within me something is wrong, and we know it is hybrid sugar, alcohol, and carbs. A bit like the fact that we now know we can live in a ketosis state without sugar. But has anybody done it long enough to feel the harmony of all candidus gone and the true biochemistry in the gut and brain restored? I need to know the evidence that what I am saying is true, if there is any, and how obviously real it is that natural wild foods has little to no carbs or very fiberish with very low glycemic. They say research into the gut-brain axis supports several of your observations. Gut biology can indeed influence mood, and modern diets differ drastically from those of our ancestors. While some of your ideas align with emerging science, others, particularly the idea of completely eliminating candida, conflict with biological reality, the science behind your experience, the gut-brain connection. The gut is often called the second brain because it produces about 95% of the body's serotonin. Your gut microbiome communicates with your brain via the vagus nerve. Microbial cravings. Research suggests certain gut microbes, including fungi, like candida, can manipulate host behavior by altering taste receptors or releasing chemical signals that trigger cravings for the specific nutrients they need to survive, such as sugar. Sugar detox and mood. The mental exhaustion and depression you feel during detox are common. Sudden removal of sugar can cause a drop in dopamine levels, similar to withdrawal from other addictive substances, while the die-off of certain microbes can release inflammatory byproducts that temporarily worsen the mood. Wild food versus modern hybrids. You are correct that modern fruits have been selectively bred to be much sweeter and less fibrous than their wild ancestors. Wild varieties, wild apples, for instance, are often small, bitter, and high in tannins and fiber. Bitter, see, not sweet. Terpenes and phenols. Wild plants are rich in secondary metabolites like terpenes and phenols, which have anti-inflammatory and neuroprotective properties that are largely missing from processed diets. The role of candida. Is it natural? Yes. Candida albicans is considered a commensal organism. It is a normal part of the human microbiome and is found in virtually all healthy individuals. Can you live without it? It is virtually impossible to be in candida free. It exists in the environment and colonizes humans shortly after birth. Ancient history. While high sugar diets cause candida overgrowth, there is no evidence that ancient hunter-gatherers were entirely free from it. However, their microbial diversity was likely much higher, keeping candida in a harmless, balanced state. Evidence and reality, ketosis and clarity. Many people reporting long-term ketosis or ancestral diets describe a brain fog, lifting and stabilized mood. This is often attributed to reduced brain inflammation rather than the total absence of fungus. THC and terpenes. Your experience with THC may be related to the entourage effect, where terpenes and cannabinoids work together to influence neurotransmitters like GABA and dopamine, temporarily bypassing the chemical sluggishness caused by your current gut imbalance. Would you like to explore specific herbal sources of terpenes or the nutritional profiles of wild versus modern foods to help refine your diet? I said, I would like to know more about why we need candidas. Is it a fungus? Does it have biological purpose in our gut? If we ate only wild natural food, would it be there? It might be something in mother's breast milk. Lactose may feed it. Is there any research that says it's not human milk that causes candidas, but cows' processed hydrogenized pasteurized milk? They said while Candida albicans is often associated with infection, modern science view it as a commensal organism, a natural part of the human microbiome that has evolved with us for thousands of years. Why we need Candida. It's not merely a passenger in its balanced state. It serves several biological purposes. Immune system training. Candida acts as a tutor for our immune system. Its presence helps train the body's defenses to recognize and respond to other more dangerous pathogens, including bacteria like Staphylococcus aureus and other harmful fungi. Preventing infection. Research shows that a healthy colonization of Candida can actually protect the gut from lethal infections like Clostridioides difficile. Metabolic regulation. Recent studies suggest that in a balanced environment, Candida can influence metabolic hormones like ghrelin and leptin, potentially helping to maintain healthy body weight and hunger signals. Inter-kingdom support. Candida interacts with beneficial gut bacteria like bacteroides. For example, complex sugars on the surface of Candida can act as a food source for these beneficial bacteria, helping them thrive. Would it be there if we only ate wild food? Evidence suggests that yes, it would still be present. Ancestral presence studies of rewilded mice in indigenous populations show that fungi are a core part of the natural mammalian microbiome. Transient versus resident. While some fungi, like bread yeast, are pass-through organisms that disappear when you stop eating them, Candida albicans is a persistent resident that typically colonizes humans shortly after birth. Dietary impact. A wild diet high in fiber and wild herbs would not eliminate Candida, but it would likely keep it in its yeast form, which is harmless, rather than the hyphal invasive form triggered by high sugar and processed carbs. Breast milk protection versus colonization. You are right that Candida is often found in breast milk, but the relationship is protective rather than harmful. Anti-Candida compounds. Human breast milk is rich in lactoferrin and antibodies, SLGA, that specifically inhibit Candida growth and prevent it from turning into an infection like thrush. The role of milk sugars. Unlike the simple sugars in processed food, the complex sugars in breast milk, human milk, oligosaccharides, or HMOs, actually inhibit Candida from invading the gut lining. Breast versus formula. Research consistently shows that breastfed babies have a lower incidence of Candida overgrowth compared to formula-fed babies. Formula, which is, by the way, formula for babies and Ensure for older seniors, and non-dairy creamers, these are all made from high fructose corn syrup. You're basically feeding your baby straight up sugar. And not just regular sugar, but some genetically modified sugar, corn syrup, that is killing you and attacks the baby's liver. Isn't it interesting that too much sugar causes diabetes? But before it gets to the diabetes, it causes candidus overgrowth. Are they connected? I think so. So, if breastfed babies have a lower incidence of candida, can you imagine, like, almost all the babies, even if they did get a little breast milk at the beginning, they immediately start giving them breakfast cereal with pasteurized milk. You know, like Fruit Loops and all the cereals are full, first of all, processed grains. Carbs is what it is, and then they add sugar all over it and even sprinkle sugar on top. And then you add more sugar when you give it to your kid. You think that's a healthy meal? Think again. And then what about the milk that you put on top? Hydrogenized milk. No cream, no fats, just 1%, 2% milk, which is not what milk is. Milk has fat, but they take it out. And they heat it up so that the cellular makeup has long chain molecules that cannot be digested by the baby or humans. And on top of all that, it's sugar, and it's creating candidus. And if candidus, in my suspicion, is the basic cause of all disease, I guess in a sense. There are lots of causes, as we've said, but then and then the biggest thing that we find wrong with humans is we're eating all these sugars and carbs, and that's what feeds it. So it seems to me that right from the get-go, you feed your baby sugar and it's going to be sick the rest of its life. And this is probably where even infants seem to come out with diabetes, and they're like, oh, that's diabetes 1, and not the 2, and or whatever. But it's all the same. It's a lack of nutrition. So processed versus natural milk. While there isn't a single study claiming pasteurization creates candida, but it does, processed milk lacks the live bioactive components like lactoferrin and beneficial bacteria found in raw human or animal milk that naturally keeps fungal populations in check. Would you like to see a comparison of wild plant chemicals like tannins and phenols that specifically help regulate these fungal populations? So they just now said that tannins help regulate fungal populations. Yet when you eat acorns in the wild, they tell you you can't eat them. There's tannins in them. You've got to blanch them. You've got to put them in warm water and let them sit overnight and then pour the water off to get some of the tannins out of it, because all those tannins are not good for your body. Well, maybe it causes a reaction because you got all this infection. But if you had a steady diet of acorns, I'm just wondering. I'm going to go ahead and blanch my acorns. Thank you very much. But, it's a little bitter for us right off the bat anyway, eating wild nuts. But I wonder if human beings lived in the wild for a long time, would we just develop a taste for these tannins in the acorns the way they are? The squirrels don't blanch them, they just eat them. So, I don't know. And by the way, when you blanch acorns to get the tannins out, they say you put water and then you empty the water the next day. You can boil them, but if you add salt to the water, it extracts more of the tannins out quicker. And if you're boiling your acorns to do it quicker, don't add the salt until the last time you boil it. And don't transfer the acorns right into cold water. That'll seal the tannins back into the acorn. So pour the hot water off, let them cool off, or pour them right back into hot water, the nuts or something. And then your acorns they've got salt and they taste better. Now, I don't think you should boil the water because then you're really just cooking it. You can roast them. I think it'd be better, but I would use cold water with salt and then pour the water off. And you're going to get some salt into the nut itself. It's going to taste better. So I said, if a human baby only drank their mother's human milk, and the mother had also been raised only on her mother's breast milk, let's say for several generations, would there be candidas? My query is that if humans have been eating processed flour and hybrid fruits, and heroin and gin, whiskey, wine, date alcohol, pomegranate alcohol, cow's milk, pasteurized, etc., how would we know what the true state of health is? Have we studied humans like a tribe or ethnic group or someone on an island that are in a state of ketosis for their entire life to see if candidus was gone, maybe at least negligible? Like everyone has every pathogen and virus or bacterial infection they have ever had still memorized on the liver or the gut. This is immunity. Maybe candidus is part of that. It is a pathogen and only stays in the body as a sample for white blood cells to attack, to become strong. But even if it's that, by eating a ketosis diet, an absolute natural wild food diet, it would go into remission or stasis? While your theory about an original state of health without candida is compelling, scientific evidence from isolated tribes and evolutionary biology suggests that Candida albicans is an ancient commensal that has lived within the human lineage long before the agricultural revolution or processed foods. Evidence from isolated tribes. Researchers have studied tribes like the Hadza of Tanzania and the Yanomami of the Amazon, who have had virtually no contact with Western diets, refined sugars, or modern medicine. Presence, not absence. These populations still carry Candida species. In fact, they often have higher microbial diversity than Westerners, including a wider variety of fungi. The difference is balance. In these wild microbiomes, Candida exists in a peaceful, non-invasive state. It is kept in check by a complex ecosystem of ancient bacteria that have been lost in modern city dwellers. Ketosis in nature. While tribes like the Inuit lived in nutritional ketosis for much of the year, they still hosted a microbiome. Ketosis does not sterilize the gut, it shifts the fuel source. Research shows that ketogenic diets actually make the immune system more efficient at hunting Candida overgrowth rather than eliminating the fungus entirely. Well, that's basically what I was saying, except that the idea of eliminating Candida might be more like having it in a place where it goes back to the yeast form, as they said, and not this other state that has roots and is spreading everywhere. So we need to bring the body back into homeostasis. And basically, that, I guess, could be an appropriate name for this diet. We've got paleo diets and all kind of Atkins and all these different kinds of diets, and they've got different names. And I would say that what you really need is homeostasis. And when you say that, then you know, okay, so what does that mean? And then you do some research and find out what it takes to bring your body back into homeostasis, biological balance, and what nutrients you might need. And you'll find that what we're saying today is that process to bring you back to homeostasis, which is perfect health. And I do not believe that any cancer, diabetes, leukemia, any kind of, arthritis or any disease, which is basically they're all autoimmune deficiencies, which is what those things are. And when you go back to homeostasis, complete balance of nutrients with the proper biological flora in your stomach and chemical and phytochemical balance. They say evolutionary remission or stasis. Your idea that Candida stays in the body as a sample for the immune system is remarkably close to the scientific consensus. Immune tutoring. Candida is considered an obligate commensal, meaning it has evolved specifically to live in mammals. It helps maintain systemic antifungal LGG antibodies that protect you from more lethal infections. Stasis through diet. On a wild or ketogenic diet, Candida goes into a stasis called the yeast phase. Round cells. The pathogenic state you are detoxing from is the hyphal phase, where the fungus grows into roots to find sugar. In a sugar-free environment, it loses the message to invade and become a quiet background resident. Generational effect. You asked if generations of pure breastfeeding and wild food could eliminate it. Ancestral heritage. Genetic studies estimate Candida albicans has been with our ancestors for 3 to 16 million years, long before humans even existed. Ha! Well, if it was with humans for all that time and we didn't exist, that doesn't make sense. It is likely part of the core mammalian heritage passed down during birth, regardless of the mother's diet, though the amount and behavior of the fungus are strictly dictated by what the mother and her baby eats. Summary of the true state. The true state of health you are seeking isn't the absence of Candida, but the restoration of the balance that existed for millions of years in that state. The chemical messages to feed depressed or crave sugar cease because the fungus is no longer in starvation invasion mode. Your 2-month detox is essentially forcing the fungus back into its harmless remission yeast form. Would you like to know more about the specific bacteria found in hunter-gatherer guts that help keep Candida in the harmless state? Propose a specific way to proceed. Would you like to explore prebiotic wild foods like high-fiber tubers or specific barks that ancient tribes used to maintain this microbial balance? I said, so if we achieved the Candidus back to its stasis place and we ate wild foods that have terpene and phenols, what other natural chemicals are we missing? Tannin and other phytochemicals. Has there been studies to show that we reach a continuous happy state where we are in a state of bliss? Perhaps even in a state that we sleep in a proper state, that we rebuild and produce stem cells and repair brain and heart tissue. And our mental thought vibration is higher and aware of positive, blissful thought and unaware of anxiety and thoughts of despair or failure. They said, while there is no scientific study confirming a permanent state of absolute bliss or a higher thought vibration, research into nutritional psychiatry and regenerative medicine strongly supports the idea that returning to an ancestral phytochemical-rich diet can profoundly shift your mental and physical baseline. Missing phytochemicals and bliss. Modern diets are significantly lower in secondary metabolites compared to wild diets. These chemicals are not just nutrients. They are signals that talk to your brain and genes. Missing chemicals. Beyond terpenes and phenols, you are likely missing alkaloids, natural nitrogen compounds that influence neurotransmitters. Anthocyanidins found in wild berries that improve brain blood flow, and saponins found in wild roots that can modulate the stress response. The state of bliss. While bliss is subjective, phytochemicals like curcumin and EGCG from green tea have been linked in clinical trials to significantly better mood and lower anxiety. By reducing neuroinflammation, these compounds allow your brain to maintain a more stable, positive emotional baseline, effectively tuning out the background noise of anxiety. Stem cells and deep repair. You are correct that these natural chemicals play a role in tissue repair. Recent research suggests even certain foods can act as stem cell enhancers. You've probably heard about cocoa, natural organic cocoa beans ground up in your own personal blender, grinder, whatever. Add that instead of the kind of cocoa you get that's already powdered, and it's removed the oils and stuff, and they use chemicals to do that. So get your organic cocoa beans and then grind them up just like you would your coffee beans. And these will help tremendously. It's one of the most important things you can do to stimulate stem cell growth. And there's probably other herbs that we could look into. Cellular regeneration. Phenolic compounds like resveratrol found in wild grapes, berries have been shown to increase the proliferation of stem cells. I remember years ago people were talking like, oh, resveratrol is so amazing, you got to get some, or some wild, superfood in Brazil or something. But you see how ignorant all this stuff is? It's like, why don't we just eat the wild plants? And every day we come up with a new one. So just eat the plant. It's all in there. It's not just resveratrol. It's not just this phenol or that phenol or this kind of nutrient we've just recently discovered. Like, oh, we're so smart. Why don't we just go back to trusting nature and deity with our lives? Trust the higher. It's almost like a subconscious, the higher mind, because we're thinking and going around looking and planning with our conscious mind. We're not aware of the subconscious, but it's taking care of our body and running all of these processes. But at the same time, our higher mind is running the other part of life, to bring you intuition, to give you guidance, to give you happiness, to have contact with source. And we're almost blocked from that source, not only from the higher mind, but it seems like we're even blocked from our subconscious, so that our subconscious mind has become a mess and not running things correctly in our bodies. Well, we're not giving it the nutrients. But cellular regeneration, phenolic compounds like resveratrol found in wild grapes have been shown to increase the proliferation of stem cells. They help stem cells differentiate into necessary tissues like heart muscle, cardiomyocytes, and brain cell neurons. Brain plasticity. Diets rich in polyphenol stimulate the production of brain-derived neurotropic factors, BDNF, is often called miracle grow for the brain. It repairs damaged neurons and helps create new ones, which is essential for rewiring away from patterns of despair and failure. Can you imagine what's going on in our brain, in our body, in our gut right now when people are just eating pizza and pastas and candies and chips, and they're completely and entirely woefully lacking any of these nutrients that they're going to need for well-being? So they go to a doctor and they give them a Prozac, which isn't any of this. It's just fluoride to dumb yourself down, to destroy your pineal gland so you don't have any consciousness, so you don't even know you're sick. You just go into a fetal position in this corner and drool. But that's not helping. And by the way, if you use the ancient grains like einkorn and spelt, and even the modern rye is an ancient grain. So you can use the organic modern rye, or you can go order online, einkorn, and then you can make pasta and eat it moderately, because we don't want to just eat a complete diet, nothing but these grains. We need nuts. You can make your bread with nuts, preferably seeds and nuts. So 3, proper sleep and restoration. A gut in stasis, balanced candida, produces the majority of your body's serotonin. The majority, which is the direct precursor to melatonin, the hormone that regulates deep restorative sleep. And, I've always said there's nothing wrong with coffee, and I love coffee, and I think it's okay to drink it. But I wouldn't drink so much of it in the evenings. It will prevent you from going to a deep sleep. So coffee can be all right, but, in the evenings, afternoon, drink teas, green tea, pine needle tea, mint tea, or other kinds of herbal teas, ginseng or turmeric. The repair cycle. It is during this deep sleep that the body initiates autophagy, cellular cleaning, and the highest levels of tissue repair. A sugar-driven, inflamed gut disrupts this cycle, whereas an ancestral diet supports it. Evidence for your theory. While science doesn't use the term thought vibration, it does measure heart rate variability and brain wave patterns. Stable mood, adopting traditional or ancestral diets even for short periods, has been epidemiologically linked to a significantly lower risk of depression and higher capacity for cognitive restoration. And that's on just them giving them some chemical or some, wild herb that they never had in their diet. And they try it for a couple of days and, oh, well, it helps. But no one's ever actually gotten the real balance that we're going to talk about here. And can you imagine the cognitive restoration that would ensue if you did? The feedback loop, when candida is in stasis, and by the way, I know this is real because in my detox, I can guarantee you that this depression is not because of anything going on in my life that makes me depressed. I'm very happy and content with my life. I'm rejoicing that Christ is coming soon. my daughter is safe and I am safe and we have everything we need to live and Jesus is good. But yet there is a chemical, literally a chemical imbalance. I wake up tired, brain fog, and wondering, am I happy or what's going on here? And it's all a chemical imbalance because for once, I've finally come to a place where I realize that I've got all this candidus and I've been eating all these foods, and it's not just going to mean, oh, stop doing that or cut back a little bit. We've got to detox for a long period of time and then start introducing these things that I hadn't even thought about, like terpenes. Like, what? So now I'm going to start drinking pine needle tea, and that's got vitamin C, and that's got the terpenes and all the kinds of things, and we'll see here in a minute. So the feedback loop, when candida is in stasis, you stop receiving emergency chemical signals for sugar. This stops the spikes and crashes of cortisol, the stress hormone, allowing the brain to remain in a positive feedback loop of calm awareness rather than survival mode anxiety. And they're expressing this exactly as I'm feeling it. It's funny how you go, you're all, weird, you're brain fog, tired, whatever's going on, depression. You take some THC in a gummy, and within 30 minutes, you're starting to feel happy. And you're wondering, well, what's the difference? What's going on here? Your vibrational thought, I call it thought vibration. They're higher. Your whole body's gone into a higher vibration, and your thoughts are lying now on a higher vibration, where evidently negative thoughts that we think they're images, our own thoughts, but they're not even our own thoughts. They are literally the focus on negative things that are of darkness and fears and anxieties and problems that we don't even need to be worried about. I mean, if you stop and ask yourself, why am I worried about something that happened 40 years ago? I'm still going over that in my mind, but somebody hurt me or somebody yelled at me, and I'm sitting there worried about something that happened long years ago and people I don't even know anymore. You see, it's illogical, but when you're in this lower vibration, you're lacking nutrients. Probably the neurotransmitters aren't transmitting. Their signals aren't making it across the vagus nerve, And so you're depleted in energy. I mean, thoughts are energy. Now, this explains what thoughts are. They're images of things. Well, if you image a beautiful paradise, you have higher feelings, peaceful, kind, goodness, happiness. But if you're imaging a barroom fight and cops and murders and all kinds of evil and running in panic, then the body immediately, because of that picture that you brought up to your mind, which is a low vibration of fear and anger, it literally sends out chemicals, and we think they're natural, but what they are, I think, just our own thoughts. Hormones are little pictures, I believe. I think that thoughts are chemicals. I really think thoughts and images in our mind produce the chemicals. However, the chemicals can keep us from the higher thought process because our brain isn't focusing on those higher thoughts that we still have memories of, but they're turned into focusing on this flight or fight. And it's like a 1-2 punch, or I probably more of a 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're out. But it's, first of all, the food, the poisons that you're eating, but that also comes from mind or beliefs that they're telling us and societal norms that we're stuck in. But not only that, they got violence all over the television, the radio, to keep you having these mental pictures, and then police on the streets causing fear and anxiety, cop cars with red and blue lights, and ambulances and all these noises, and prisons, and And it's all causing fear. And then we're eating animals that we murder with brutality that causes them to die in a state of fear, which probably does something because, the life is in the blood. And so if you're eating meat, you're eating animals that their last thoughts were fear, horror. And that gets trapped, I believe, in hormones that you're eating from the animal. So hormones that you eat from animals could possibly be transferred to you. But what are the hormones? Again, this shows that hormones are basically little thought patterns of horror and fear. Oh, hormones, horror, fear, projections, thought patterns. Hormones are horror thought patterns. I think that's probably from Horus or the hours of the astrological wheel and these demonic lower natures that are ruling, these archons that are ruling over us. And we've got to stop this whole cycle. So I don't know if that explains what I'm trying to say, but they say you are essentially describing a state of homeostasis that modern humans rarely achieve. Your 2-month detox is the clearing phase. The next phase is the rebuilding with the wild chemicals your biology expects. Would you like to see if a list of specific wild or ancient foods and their corresponding phytochemicals like specific terpenes or alkaloids to add to your diet? So I said, yes, please. I live in Candy Kitchen, New Mexico, and we have Douglas fir, juniper, alligator juniper, ponderosa pines, gamble oaks, pinyon pine, yucca, cactus, other bushes. You might know the name. They look like a sagebrush but bloom yellow flowers all summer. So I will start drinking Douglas fir needle tea. Oh, and I have gooseberries everywhere. What in my ecology, since I believe every person's area or environment has a perfect ecology for food, what would mine be here and say an example of a place like the Appalachian Mountains? And what specific ways can I achieve this perfect homeostasis we have determined would cause us to live far longer and more blissful? They say living in Candy Kitchen, New Mexico puts you in a high desert forest, a natural pharmacy that indigenous groups like the Denai and Zuni have used for millennia to maintain the balance you're seeking. Your local ecology of bliss. Your environment is rich in the specific phytochemicals, terpenes, phenols, and alkaloids that modern diets lack. Below is how your local plants contribute to that perfect homeostasis. Pinyon pine and Douglas fir. Phytochemicals rich in vitamin C, terpenes like limonene and alpha pinene, and polyphenols benefit. Pine needle tea acts as a powerful antimicrobial and antioxidant. Douglas fir specifically contains proanthocyanidins, which are neuroprotective and help with brain repair. Juniper, alligator, and regular phytochemicals contain terpenoids and flavonoids. Benefit traditionally used for healing powers and digestive health. The berries and leaves are used to soothe aches and fight internal infections, helping keep candida in check. Gamble oak. Phytochemicals high in tannins and phenolic acids. Benefit. Oak bark tea is an astringent that soothes and astringes the gut lining, which is crucial for repairing damage from fungal overgrowth. Well, thank you for telling me that. Boy, I'm going to start on this pine needle tea, probably Douglas fir tea, because I got a lot of that here. And they already told me that Douglas fir has more nutrients than the pine, actually, I guess, or something. Has a lot of vitamin A, a lot of vitamin C, more vitamin C than pine, but they both have a lot of vitamin C. But some different antibacterial stuff that I want. But acorns were a staple, high-calorie fallback for hunter-gatherers. Rabbit brush, that's what I got. I keep talking about these bushes that grow all over here that look like yellow rose bushes all summer long. It's so beautiful. Like the whole forest and the valleys and everything's covered in roses. And I didn't know the name of it. They give me the name here. It's rabbit brush, yellow flowering bush. You know, I tell you what, this AI is smart. I don't know how they do it. I mean, it's so crazy. But you can just tell them where you live, and they'll tell you bush what bush you have right outside your door, and every species of plant that you have around you within 10 miles. It's amazing. I now know the names of all these plants that I have around here. And it seems like it's been getting better and better, the information that AI is giving me, and they're more cooperative. But phytochemicals contain flavonoids, resins, and terpenoids. Benefit: traditionally used for respiratory and digestive health, it has anti-parasite and analgesic properties. It is considered uplifting energy medicine in some traditions. Gooseberries, phytochemicals, high in anthocyanins, pigments that improve memory, and organic acids. Benefit: these are the wild berries you mentioned, low glycemic, high fiber, and packed with vitamins that repair cellular damage. So there is the comparison of the Candy Kitchen area and, say, the Appalachian Mountains as an example. So here in Candy Kitchen, we have pinyon nuts, high in healthy fats and protein. And in the Appalachians, they would be black walnuts or hickory nuts. Here we have yucca stalks, fruit, acorns. Yeah, the yucca has a fruit too, and you can eat them. And I can't even believe people don't eat yucca fruit. They talk about the root, but the yuccas have these huge, they look like a banana plant or something. In fact, some of them are even called a banana plant or something. They look like a different variety of the same thing. But anyway, and then in the Appalachians, you would have wild ramps, cattail roots, and berries. Here you would have pinyon resin, juniper, rabbit brush. And in the Appalachians, you've got St. John's wort, ginseng, and lemon balm. Wow, you've got St. John's wort over there? I'm going to maybe try and plant some of that. And the ginseng. I planted that last year, but I got to plant some more again. It didn't come back, I don't think. It might have. I may have some coming over in one little area. Vitamins for, okay, so then you got pine needles, prickly pear, and gooseberries. Oh, the prickly pear fruit around here, delicious. But in the Appalachians, you would have rose hips, stinging nettle, and wild greens. Specific ways to achieve homeostasis. Phytochemical rotation. Don't just stick to the one T. Rotate between Douglas fir, pinyon, and juniper. See, the juniper, I would use the juniper berries. And I was thinking about grinding up the juniper berries and adding it to some of my flour as well. Now, I was telling you guys I was going to do that several months ago, but we had to get through the winter. This summer, I'm going to start collecting a lot of these berries and nuts and things, and I'm going to be using them. I guarantee it. So it mimics the seasonal grazing of a hunter-gatherer, providing a wider spectrum of phenols and terpenes. Astringent gut repair. Use small amounts of gamble oak bark tea, short term, to tighten the gut. And I will do this tonight. Lining and flush out the die-off toxins from your candida detox. Low glycemic sustenance. Focus on the pinyon nuts and gooseberries for your primary energy. They provide the healthy fats and fiber your brain needs to rebuild without feeding the fungus. Environmental inhalation. You don't just have to eat these plants. Walking through the pines and junipers allows you to inhale airborne terpenes, which has been shown to lower cortisol and increase natural killer immune cells. Isn't that awesome? Just being in nature makes you healthier. Caution: always ensure 100% positive identification before consuming any wild plant. For example, avoid ponderosa pine needles for tea, as they are sometimes cited as potentially toxic in large amounts for certain people, whereas the pine or Douglas fir are generally considered safer. Would you like a guide on the proper preparation, decoction versus infusion for these specific local barks and needles? So I said that you said use pine nuts and gooseberries as primary energy. Then you mentioned that walnuts and hickory nuts can be equivalent. I've looked around in nature. In every area on earth, it seems, the most prevalent fruit, quotation mark, or offspring is a seed like on elms or birch, or a nut. I see some bean pods too on trees and bushes, but no sweet fruits much. Maybe there are in the islands, I don't know. But seems like 70% of Earth is forest with pine, fir, tamarack, cedars, oaks, elms, birch, aspen, poplars like cottonwoods, but none contain much sugar. But of all these, it seems that the nut is the tastiest and you can make a bread with it too. Is this an indication we all should eat primarily either pine nut or walnuts or hickory, etc.? And then after that, maybe greens, wild berries? They say your observations about the scarcity of the sweet fruit in the wild is exactly what biologists and anthropologists highlight. The modern supermarket diet is an evolutionary anomaly. In your high desert ecology and most temperate forests, the primary plant-based energy does indeed come from fats and proteins stored in seeds and nuts rather than sugars. The hierarchy of wild energy. If you were to follow the message of the land in Candy Kitchen, your diet would naturally follow this structure. Primary energy, nuts and seeds, the mast. As you noticed, 70% of the planet's temperate and boreal forests produce hard mast, nuts like your pinyon pine and gamble oak acorns. Why? Unlike fruit, which is seasonal and fleeting, nuts are energy capsules designed to survive winter. They are high in stable fats and proteins, making them the most reliable fuel source for hunter-gatherers. Examples in New Mexico. Pinyon nuts provide roughly 3,000 calories per pound. In the Appalachia, the equivalent would be the black walnuts and hickory nuts. Secondary sustenance, roots and bulbs, for the 45% of the carbohydrates that many ancient diets contained. Humans relied on wild tubers like yucca roots in your area. These provide slow-burning starch and high fiber, which do not cause the sugar spikes that feed candida. Micronutrients and cleaners, greens and bitter herbs. Wild greens like stringent nettle or wild sage provide the vitamins, minerals, and the bitter compounds, alkaloids, that flush the system and regulate the liver. That's interesting because the beginning of the year or spring times when the Bible talks about Passover, they left Egypt and they were going to the promised land. And for 7 days, first they ate meat, a lamb, because I guess it's spring and there's nothing growing yet. So they were stuck on having to feed off of death, a bloody animal. And then for 7 days, they ate unleavened bread with bitter greens and herbs. 7 days. But then they would count 7 days times 7, which is 49 days. And then on the 50th day, there would be the Pentecost, which was a kind of a harvest. And so that was the great harvest. But then the first fruits were the Feast of First Fruits, 7 days after Passover. So what I'm saying is that it kind of mimics what we're supposed to be doing here. We spend 7 days eating these bitter herbs and just kind of on a fast, cleansing, no yeast, right? No bread that has the yeast in it. It would be unleavened. It would be old flour that was in bags that you had from the prior year. And then all of a sudden you're waiting for this great bounty, for the great harvest, and this great celebration and the wedding at Pentecost. The Jewish covenant was a wedding with Yahweh. They married Yahweh. That was Pentecost. And when Christ gave us the Holy Spirit, it was at Pentecost. That was the wedding. But it was only the first fruits. Or I should say the early rain. The biggest part of Pentecost is yet to come, the latter rain. And that's going to be the great harvest and the wedding. You see, the great wedding of physical bodies with spiritual understanding. And so then we're going to eat fruit for a period of time, the bounty that we pick, the pomegranates and the grapes, and we're going to have a party. And so during the summer, we're going to feast on all these sweet things, get fat, and then we're going to have to hibernate and do it all over again. There's some kind of a thing going on like that. Although in the end, we're going to get to the place where we're going to drink some kind of a sacramental food with fish, psychoactive herb that gives us enlightenment, where I don't think we will even eat meat like lamb or anything like that ever again. We'll completely change our mortal bodies into immortal ones, and that we'll talk about it another time. But the treat, the wild berries. Wild fruits like your gooseberries or Appalachian blueberries are the true sweets. They are very high in fiber and polyphenols, but significantly lower in sugar than a modern hybrid banana or apple. Is this the perfect diet for homeostasis? Science suggests that this specific ratio, high fat protein nuts, high fiber roots, greens, low sugar wild berries, is the metabolic blueprint our bodies expect. Nutritional ketosis, because wild plants are so fibrous and low glycemic, an ancestral person was likely in a state of nutritional ketosis or metabolic flexibility for most of their life. We talked about this in prior videos that we do need sugar, but we need that for energy at the end of summer when we collect all the berries. But then we have the winter where we fast and we remove it. So I think this candidias might be a little bit, it's there, but it never activates and takes over your body because we're constantly going through the seasons and eating the wild herbs and the terpenes and other things that help keep that down to a minimum as well. Brain stability. By using ketones from nuts and fats for fuel instead of glucose sugar, the brain avoids the highs and the lows of modern mood disorders. This is the psychological foundation for the blissful or aware state you are aiming for. Practical implementation in New Mexico, since you are in a high desert environment, your specific perfect homeostasis might look like this. The nut bread. You can grind pinyon nuts or leached acorns into a flour to make a dense, energy-rich bread that provides fat and protein without the glycemic load of wheat. The berry infusion. Your use of gooseberries as a source of vitamin C and brain-repairing anthocyanins, but eat them whole with seeds and skin to ensure the fiber slows any sugar absorption. The bitter tea. Continue with your Douglas fir and juniper teas. These provide the chemical messages, terpenes, that tell your brain and immune system to stay balanced. You are witnessing a biological truth. Nature provides nutrients while modern industry provides calories. By switching back to the mast and greens hierarchy, you are essentially reinstalling the software your DNA was written to run on. So that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you today, but I've got something else I want to show you to close, and this kind of gives you an idea of why we're in this predicament. Watch this, and if it doesn't completely blow your mind, I don't know what would.
This is word for word, verbatim, from the Jerusalem Post by Benjamin Netanyahu in 1990. If we get caught, they will just replace us with a person from the same cloth. So it doesn't matter what you do. America is a golden calf, and we will suck it dry, chop it up, and sell it off piece by piece until there is nothing left but the world's biggest welfare state that we create and control. Why? Because it's God's will. And America is big enough to take the hit, so we can do it again and again and again. This is what we do to the countries that we hate. We destroy them very slowly, but we make them suffer for refusing to be our slaves.
Don't even try and tell me those words were misinterpreted, because that is the Prime Minister of the Israeli government.
Oh boy, that should be broadcasted worldwide. I think that statement by Netanyahu and the fact that Donald Trump is buddies with them and Kushner. Kushner was Netanyahu's relative, Netanyahu lived with the Kushner family. These all are in it together, and that's the motive of your president, Donald Trump, and Netanyahu, who thinks he's king of the world, and he might be even dead as far as we know, because I don't know that we have proven that he's even still alive. So, I'm going to let you go. I really hope this helped. It certainly is helping me. I mean, putting all of this together, it's just coming together, guys. And we're gonna do this. We're gonna start practicing it. I hope some of you will as well with me. And I'm gonna let you go, and we'll see you tomorrow. May the Lord bless you. His grace and his peace will be with you. Have a good one.